The projection for Florida State in 2025 obviously should be better than 2024. Again, horrible season last year. Let's see what this projection looks like this year. But before we get to that, let's look back at the last 4 years. So we'll see kind of how they have stacked up against our projection with our formula. In 2021, projection was 6-6. They went 5-7, one game under. And then in 2022, the projection was 7-5. They beat that by a couple of games, went 9-3. And in 2023, projected to go 9-3. They went 12-0, beat it by 3 games. But then you look at 2024, projected to go 8-4. They go 2-10, 6 games under the projection. So, the projection again has not really been very accurate at Florida State. It's been a tough team to predict. They've had some surprises, both good and bad, and we'll see if maybe they are a surprise team this year. Maybe they bounce back and they're a lot better than last year. We'll find out. So let's get to the projection. Again, here's the schedule. This is the scale that we use, and this is all based off of our tier rankings. So, Florida State, we have 6 tiers in the Power 4. Florida State was at the very bottom last year. They were in tier number 6. And as we move into 2025, we can only move teams. This is just kind of the rule that I have. You only move teams up or down by 1 tier. So Florida State might be a lot better. They might jump up into tier 4 or maybe even tier 3. But because of the formula that we have in place, you can only move them up 1 tier. So I've got them in. So they have to wind up in tier number 5, which again is near the bottom. They could be a lot better than that, and obviously then the projection would change. But for this video, for this formula, again, this is a tier 5 team, which means if they play a tier 6 team, then that game would be like a 61 to 70% game in the purple. But if they play that game on the road, then it drops to a 50-50 game, and that's the way the formula works. So I think you do have a couple of easier wins. East Texas A&M and Kent State. Now, East Texas A&M is probably close to 100%. Like it's 99%. Kent State, on the other hand, probably closer to 80%. But again, you look at the talent of these two rosters. Florida State should win this game. They should be favored by, 20 points or whatever. So you would expect 2 easy wins here in these games. Then we go to Wake Forest, another game where they should be favored. So Wake Forest is in tier 6, 1 tier below Florida State. So Florida State going to be in that 61 to 70% range here. Probably about a touchdown favorite if I had to guess. Looking at it right now, 7 or 8 point favorite. So those are really the 3 games where I think if I'm a Florida State fan, I feel really good. I mean, we should win these games. I don't even know if I'd say I feel really good about Wake Forest. If this team makes some strides and they're a lot better than they were last year, then yeah, I think you feel good about Wake Forest. But if they don't, if they're similar to what they were last year, then this game's probably closer to a toss-up. But those 3 games are the games where I think Florida State will be favored for sure. Now, they may be favored in some other games as well. We go to the flip side of this, though. We got Clemson and Florida. So these teams are in tier number 2, plus they're on the road. That's why they wind up in the red. They are just too many tiers above Florida State. And then you've got Alabama and Miami also in tier number 2, but those games are at home. So those actually are in the orange, 20 to 29%. So, kind of close looking at these teams. But Florida State does play 4 teams out of that number 2 tier, that second tier. They don't play any tier 1 teams, so that's the good news. But you do have 4 games against tier 2 teams, and all these games I think will be really tough. Miami, I would probably give them the best chance against Miami just because the rivalry game, it's at home, all that. But these other 3 games I think it's going to be very tough for Florida State to win. And remember, there's no human element here. I'm not making any predictions. This is all just based off of our formula. So we move on now to the yellow games, and that's Virginia. So Virginia is 1 tier above Florida State, and that game is also on the road. So that's why it is in the yellow. Plus, it's short week, Friday night game on the road. Those are always tough. And then you get to the rest of this schedule: Pittsburgh, Stanford, Virginia Tech, NC State. All of these games do wind up as 50-50 games. These are the games that could go either way. So if you're Florida State and you beat East Texas A&M, you beat Kent State, you beat Wake Forest, and then you're able to win these 50-50 games, you could possibly get to 7-5, which is a big improvement from last year. But on the other side of that, what if they lose all these games? Then they're sitting there at 3-9, and it's another horrible season. If they split these games, then they're actually only going to be 5-7, and they miss out on a bowl game. But that's, the way this works is we average all the games out. So it's not exactly like that. We don't count Wake Forest as a win. We give them and the exact number we use is 65%. So 65 is the number there. So when we average it all out, what's the projection for Florida State? Well, It's 6-6. It's a bowl game, but I'll tell you what, the actual number is 5.5. So we did round it up to 6-6, but it's right there in the middle of 5-7 and 6-6, and I think that's pretty fair. I think for Florida State, a bowl game is a successful season. If they miss out, if they go 5-7, I think it's a disappointing season. Maybe there's a chance they really bounce back. They get to say 7-5 or 8-4, but there are going to be a lot of tough games on this schedule. So if I'm a Florida State fan, I'm rooting for 6-6. That's my goal. That's my hope for this season. And if they can get there, I'd say, a pretty good bounce back from the 2-10 that they were last season.